Issue 10. So Sonic's making a game out of running on hidden landmines. While it does establish his character as a extreme, thrill-seeking adrenaline junkie, this does look pretty stupid of him. Although it makes sense that his feet would trigger the explosion, and they'd be fast enough to get out of the way effortlessly. Still, if Eggman could just put landmines everywhere, why hasn't he put them literally everywhere and won over the Freedom Fighters already? This seems like an overpowered weapon for a villain. I mean, he can't put them everywhere or else he'd blow up his robots and Robians, but at least put them all over the Great Forest. Does he not have enough materials for making that when he has infinite materials for making all the robots he wants? The reason they're here is for Rotor to find an electrical cable buried here in order for them to make use of the electricity from Robotropolis. With Tails expressing faith in him to show that he's a good friend. Makes sense they have to do this since Rotor has a lot of engineering to do, so he needs all the electricity he can get. But, like, do they do this regularly, or is this the first time they've done it? And if so, how has Rotor been able to make anything without electricity? Rotor finds two identical cables, and Sonic is a careful one for once, by saying that he's worried that one of them could set off another landmine. Because of course a cable for electricity and a cable for landmine would look identical to each other. After Tails naively tries to be helpful while smiling in a dangerous and tense situation for some reason, Rotor tells everyone to stand back as he disconnects one of the cables. So is he preparing to blow himself up? I mean, what? This looks pretty dangerous, and they're not standing back nearly enough. Fortunately, a force field traps them instead. But then, a NERB, an underground society person, pops out of the ground and saves them from the swap bots unintentionally. This is a story dedicated to the discriminatory society of the NERBs who are completely unlikable. They refuse to even try to help fight Eggman. Although it would make sense if their excuse was that it would only get Eggman against them. I mean, I can understand their reasoning behind this, and their ideas definitely helped them in the situation, because them being like independent and isolationist is probably what kept them from all being roboticized and taken over by Eggman in the first place. I mean, Eggman apparently has been underground, as we'll find out later on, so I'm wondering how he didn't find them yet. But still, this is probably the only reason they've survived for this long. Sonic uses his spin dash to open a door to what turns out to be the Mobius sewer system. Why has he ever played down there as a kid? No matter how adventurous he was as a kid, he shouldn't have wanted to go here. It must stink. And Mobius sewer system implies that that's the only one in all of Mobius. But it was abandoned a while ago, so does that mean the entire world of Mobius has no sewer system now? Again, that's like Mount Mobius. It doesn't make any sense. Not to mention he's saying as a kid, as if he's not a kid right now. Like, I don't really buy that they're teenagers now. They look too short for that. And like their later designs in the comic are taller, so yeah. He encounters a force field and a giant digging robot, which somehow hasn't found all of the NERBs and roboticized them by now. And Sonic dents the robot next drill by making it hit a wall with the speed. Sonic insists on helping the obnoxious NERBs for some reason, and finds his way to a door to the Mobius River, using his spin dash on it, and then outrunning the river. He passes by the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the way in a pointless cameo, who fortunately don't interact with him and break the immersion of the story or anything. And Sonic finally gets out of the underground, with a geyser from the river lifting up the entire city of Robotropolis. That was pretty cute of Tails to say. And here's another forced joke. Eggman only takes a bath once a year? Wouldn't he be dead from lack of hygiene by now? This isn't funny, this is just confusing. And the story ends with the NERBs accepting them into their culture instead of accepting other societies, which would be less likely for them, but still. I wish these guys had all been roboticized. That would have been a perfect dramatic ending to the story. It would have been satisfying, and it would have been a villain moment for Eggman. The real story begins with the Freedom Fighters taking a ride in a hot air balloon again, and a buzz bomber popping it again. And all the freedom fighters, even Bunny of all people, tell Antoine off despite the fact that they were perfectly willing to get into the hot air balloon in the first place. I know that, seriously, even Bunny, I know that Antoine isn't exactly popular in this group, but it still looks out of character for literally all of them to be ganging up angrily against them. Makes me wonder if they've been holding back this anger against them for quite some time. But seriously, every time so far they've gone into a hot air balloon, it's been popped. Why would Antoine bother with this useless thing? Well, he was the head of the hot air balloons for Sally's father. Maybe it's a pride thing. Also, this language mistake of Antoine's actually makes sense. Because, you see, balloon head of balloons. In French, when you have, like, compound nouns, well, you don't really have compound nouns at all. It's like, instead of saying Paul's book, you say the book of Paul. But in this case, the way you'd say it in French would be actually correct in English. So he was basically overcorrecting where he made it into a compound noun, like balloon head, when really, the way you would have said it in French, head of balloons, would have worked just fine. But normally in French you can't have like wine glass. You don't have that stuff. You just have glass for wine or glass with wine. That's the mistake that he was making. I love how he shows humanity by being ashamed of himself and wanting to prove that he's not useless. Proving that he's aware that he hasn't been helpful and understands his reputation. I love how Tails shows humanity by comforting Antoine instead of hating him and not caring about him at all. Like, he didn't have to go out his way to go talk to him. So far, his bystander syndrome when Sonic was bullying him had created the wrong impression. And then a bunch of badniks attack the freedom fighters, but Antoine gets to have a badass moment finally by throwing a bucket of mud at the Buzz Bombers from his hot air balloon to save them, throwing sandbags full of explosives that he somehow got at the SWAT bots, and best of all, he grabs Eggman by the cape, lifting up into the air, and when he's told to unhand him, he does exactly that. So it's pretty awesome. He finally gets to have a moment of glory, and after acknowledging how useless he's usually been, as if the writer is showing self-awareness of how he's not really that useful most of the time. Of course, a hot air balloon is no less of a stupid thing for them to rely on, being nothing but a giant bullseye asking Buzz Bombers to pop it. Antoine only got to do something useful with it from a lucky break. But at least we get to see him doing something worthwhile. Angelo is the writer this time, and considering the focus on letting a character other than Sonic be useful, it makes perfect sense. Although the nerds were completely unlikable, they weren't enough to completely ruin this issue for me. I at least didn't mind Sonic and his friends traveling underground and dealing with the giant robot and stuff. And the concept of an underground society is interesting. My only complaint is that the nerds weren't all given karmatic punishment at the end. It would have been a great villain moment for Eggman at least. But I like how being shown a new nerd society is at least fleshing out the world, making me feel like there's more to this world than just the freedom fighters and Robotropolis. But any complaints I have about the nerds are made up for by Antoine getting to be a badass for once. And Tails showing that he actually cares about him helped too. So ultimately, this issue was made up for by the second story. Only really big problem I have with that is how arbitrary the whole freedom fighter fact finder machine is. That's the definition of plot convenience for the villains. Not to mention how overpowered that thing is. Like, if they can use that to find out any fact they want about the freedom fighters, how are any of the plans against them able to work? Wouldn't they just find out about them ahead of time? Why can't that fact finder thing tell them location of knothole, but it can tell them when they're having their annual picnic? And have they been fighting against Eggman for more than 1 year that they know that they have an annual picnic together?